Real good.
Amazing. All the birds have like awful names.
Mm-hmm. They do. It's amusing. That one's a good book. And then this one, if you've never noticed this one, this is full of great images of the story of life. And they're like, terrible. They're ridiculous. Like, some of them are, like, where's the, some of these are, it's just hilarious. They're funny. Like, these are not meant to be serious, obviously. The best ones are the pregnancy ones because they're like this one. It's just my favorite. It's wrong. It's not serious, clearly. It's a joke, but it's funny. Like, what is that about? What is happening there? That one and also with the dumb birds, I also have crap taxidermy. Don't know if anybody's ever perused crap taxidermy, but it's full of absolutely fabulous photos of crap taxidermy. Like, mm,
We have that book.
yeah, this one. It's so fun. How about that? Yeah, everybody wants the cat and the horse and the weirdness. That's fun. So,
The one with the monkey is my favorite.
oh yeah, I like the lion with the like weird dog face or whatever it is. That's fun. All right, so we'll roll through these today. Maybe we'll manage to get out a few minutes early since we can start a few minutes early. That would be nice for those of you who got yourselves here. Okie doke. So today we are focusing in a little bit more on structure and function with plants. We touched on it a little bit last week when we talked about vascular tissue. So now we just dig in a little more and see what we can learn. So your homework asked, most plants are flowering plants. This was what? True. It asked you this question. This one, there could have been some different acceptable answers, but what are our guesses?
Bryophytes?
Bryophytes was an arguably correct answer. But when we're going with that weird technicality, what's the line these days? What we were looking for was green algae. So I think we're going to generally classify that now as a plant, but it's a seedless vascular plant that is not a bryophyte, which is a traditional plant because the green algae is aquatic and not land plants. So when we do our plant categorization, we generally think of land plants, but these are a little different. Why are bryophytes so small?
They lack vascular.
Yeah, no vascular tissue. Got to stay close to the ground. How do they get water then? Osmosis. Their cells just soak it up, right? So this was this squirrel, right? This little squirrel. Squirrels will eat both the nuts and the outside scales of the cone, making a whole meal out of it. While unripe green pine cones have delicious seeds and tasty outside scales, squirrels will eat mature brown pine cones if they're the only ones they can find. The green pine cones have high nutritional value and are a great source of fiber and different vitamins for squirrels. They play an important role in their diets, which is why squirrels like to store the green pine cones to ensure that they always have these nutritional snacks nearby. You ever seen them like dig the hole and stick them in? And they will drop all that junk on the ground just so you can step on it barefoot because they basically leave only the little spines behind. Isn't that nice of them? Yeah, little monsters that they are. I want my awesome flower garden to grow back next year. Did I choose the right kind of flower? No, I didn't. I chose petunias, and petunias are annuals. They will not. No, because she doesn't like them. Yeah, those are petunias, and petunias are not going to come back next year. Okay, so what about the sago palm? It's not a palm. What was it?
It was a vacancy, right?
It's a gymnosperm. What kind was it? It was a cycad. Yeah. So your sago palm, which you'll very frequently see in people's houses, used to be really popular. Like I saw a bunch of them in the early 80s. I think they just made they were a popular plant to have. But yeah. But yeah, those are cycads. All right. So we have 3 tissue systems of a plant. Anybody know what one of them might be? So we have dermal tissue, vascular tissue, and ground tissue. These are our 3 main types. And then we have three main organs of a plant, excluding reproductive organs. And what are these? Drew? Here we go. So we have roots, stems, and leaves. Very good. All right. Now, a special type of tissue called meristematic tissue is the only plant tissue that can produce new cells by mitosis. Okay, so this is the stuff that you'll see at the end of roots, at the end of shoots, twigs, branches, because it can grow, right? This is the stuff that grows. And it's found at the tips of roots and shoots, like I just said. So let's look at dermal tissue. So you looked at that leaf last week, actually. You looked at the leaf, you tried at least to peel the little cuticle off and get a good look at the leaf. And you saw the stoma, right? And around them were those guard cells. And I talked about how the guard cells do this sort of thing, right? To open and close the stoma. And they do that based on water content. Like they can tell whether based on how much water content is in the guard cell, it will be open or closed. So you've got here an outer covering. And what's the outer covering of the plant called? This is what you tried to peel off in lab. So this is your cuticle. It consists of your layer of epidermal cells, and you've got your cuticle. So that's this waxy stuff on top. Covers the epidermis. And then it also provides protection against water loss and injury. That's why it's waxy, right? It's got some lipids in there. So it helps keep the moisture inside the plant. Otherwise, it would just dry out really quickly, right? And it can include the guard cells, right? These guys. And it can also have root hairs too, depending on where this cuticle is. If it's down on the root part of the plant, it can have those little root hair dealios going on. So we have our vascular tissue that transport water and nutrients throughout the plant. Now we have xylem and phloem. And I gave you a hint to remember which does what. Which one goes from roots to shoots, xylem or phloem? Xylem, yeah. And which one goes from leaves to everywhere else or whatever? That's going to be phloem, right? Okay. So how do you remember that?
Flows.
Yes. Does water go against gravity? No. So the one that doesn't push against gravity so much, like the xylem is obviously working against gravity. It's going from roots to shoots. So the phloem flows. Everything flows throughout the plant with the phloem. But that xylem is like pumping straight up, right? So you can remember that. So your xylem transports water. It's composed of dead cells, right? It's got dead cells that surround the tube. And your phloem is what's going to transport your nutrients, composed of living cells, and it's called sieve tube elements. So it allows some of the components of what it's moving to kind of leach out, right? Like a sieve. And then we have our ground tissue. So this is what lies between your dermal and your vascular tissue. So the outside of the plant and the vascular tissues that are moving water and materials throughout the plant. This is your ground tissue. So kind of like the fleshy part of the plant or the woody part of the plant. So we have parenchyma. Does anybody know what that is? What you got, Eunice?
Cell has a cell wall and a large central vacuole.
Yeah, so thin cell walls, large central vacuoles. You can find, here's an example. They found some in a potato. So if you look at them here, this is a cross section and this is longitudinal. So in this one, you're looking down at them like this, whereas in the cross section, you're looking at them like that. Does that make sense? So like cross section, you're looking at it this way. Longitudinal, you're looking at it this way, right? So you can see those thin cell walls. See how thin they are compared to some of the others? And big central vacuoles. See them in there? And then we have collenchyma. And here's an example here. They're showing it to you in celery. And anybody know about that? What you got over there, Colin?
Strong flexible cell wall.
Strong flexible cell walls. And they're found in larger plants, or they tend to be in larger plants. And you can see how these are structured a little differently than those. And then we have sclerenchyma. Do we know about that? What do we have? Kenna?
Cells that have extremely thick, rigid walls.
Yes, thick and rigid walls. Okay. Anybody heard of scleroderma? Anybody know what that is? Okay, we have sclerenchyma, and we know that this is thick, rigid cells. If I told you scleroderma is an autoimmune condition that can affect humans, what do you think it might cause? Hmm?
Hard skin.
Yes. Very good. Actually, yeah. Rigid. Your skin gets very rigid. It gets very tough. And not just all your, you can get connective tissue other than skin that has those problems as well. But yeah, that can be a really, really challenging disorder. Yep. So sclerenchyma, thick, rigid cell walls. All right, so what are three principal organs of a plant? Drew said it before. So we have roots, stems, and leaves, and their function would be roots anchor plants to the ground, absorb water and nutrients. Stems support the plant body, transport materials, and produce leaves and other organs. And then leaves absorb sunlight, conduct photosynthesis, and exchange gas. So what adaptation helps leaves conserve water, Jordan?
The epidermis.
There you go. Yeah, your epidermis and your nice waxy cuticle on the outside. They have adjustable pores that let gases in and out of the leaf. All right, so let's see. The three main tissue system are what tissue?
Dermal.
Dermal, vascular, and ground. Right. Okay, very good. And the cuticle protects against losing what? Caitlin? Water loss. Very good. And then some epidermal cells have tiny projections known as what? That can give a leaf a fuzzy appearance. What are those called? You ever seen the fuzzy leaves? Yeah. So those are called trichomes. Little leaf, little fuzzy leaf. I don't think any of these ones I have in here have the fuzziness code. Oh yeah, this one does. Well, look at that. Yeah, right? That's a Dusty Miller. That's what that is. And those have lots of little fuzzies on them. Dusty Millers, lamb's ear is another good example. Azaleas have it too. And there's this something, I forget what it's called. Shoot, I can't remember what it's actually called. But it grows wild out here and it looks like it's going to be a lamb's ear, but then it grows this giant yellow stalk. And my neighbor calls it devil's cabbage because he hates it. I can't remember.
Mulligan.
Is it what?
Mulligan.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. It's medicinal. Yeah, uh-huh. But yeah, he calls it devil's cabbage because he hates it when it gets in his garden. So dermal tissue in roots contain what that help absorb water? Guard cells. So we're looking for root hairs. So it's those little hairs on the roots, and those help absorb water because they're very small, they're very fine, they're very thin. Osmosis is easy for them, right? Because they're tiny. All right. So if we were to match these, you would get, let's see, long, narrow xylem cells with openings in their cell walls or tracheids. The lignin is your substance in the cells of dead tracheids that make wood tough. Your vessel elements are your xylem cells arranged end to end on top of one another. The sieve tube elements are your main phloem cells, and your companion cells are cells that support the phloem cells and aid in the movement of substances. How can water move from one tracheid into a neighboring cell? So the cell walls of the tracheids have many openings that connect neighboring cells to one another and allow water to flow from cell to cell. How can materials move from one sieve tube element into the next? So the end walls of sieve tube elements have many small holes in them. Materials move through these holes from one cell to the next. So if you were to complete the table that compares ground tissue cells, you would see something like this. This is basically what we just described, right? When we looked at those three different types of cells. And then the function of your parenchyma is photosynthesis in leaves. Your collenchyma is support for plant organs. And your sclerenchyma are strong, tough support and protection. So this is one of those, if it's true, leave it. If it's false, change it. What do you have for 15, Eunice? True, he says. Meristems are regions of the plant that produce new cells by mitosis. Correct. And apical meristems are found in the growing tip of a root or stem. What you got? There you go. Very good. And we have some slides that have apical meristem. Did anybody find any of those today? We've got a couple in there where you can actually see the mitosis going on at the end of the cells. It's pretty cool. I mean, end of the apical meristem. The specialized cells that can result from cell division in meristems have thin walls. True or false? She says false. Unspecialized. Very good. Newly produced plant cells undergo fertilization as they mature into different types of cells. Is that the word we're looking for there, Jordan?
No.
What are we looking for? Yeah, differentiation, right? What kind of cells can differentiate? What's the word? Stem cells. What other? Totipotent. There we go. Yes, stem cells are totipotent. So yes, totipotent is what we're looking for if it can differentiate. An apical meristem changes into a floral meristem when its pattern of gene expression changes. What are we looking for there?
I think it's true.
There you go. All right. Plants are a source of many useful fibers, such as cotton and linen. Fibers are long, thin structures that have strength and flexibility. Which plant tissue system produces fibers such as cotton and linen? What do you think? Who's got an answer for that? Anybody, anybody, anybody? Nobody wanted to try it? Isabella? Stems? Anybody else got any others? Kenna? Ground tissue, says Kenna. What'd you get? Vascular tissue, he says. Cotton is kind of a ball on the end of the stem. Yep. Leaves. Okay. So, where'd you go? So plant fibers such as cotton and linen are produced by vascular tissue system of plants. The vascular tissue contains many long, slender cells that form long tubes and have walls that are reinforced by lignin. The characteristics are similar to those of fibers such as cotton and linen. Neither dermal nor ground tissue consists of cells with these characteristics. So yes, they do grow, like cotton balls do grow like almost like a flower at the end, but it's the vascular tissue that remains that produces what we know as cotton. Anybody ever had an actual cotton blossom in your hand and tried to pull the seeds out of it? That is not easy. This is why we have cotton gins, because it will slice your fingers to ribbons, won't it? That pod is really sharp and the seeds are prickly almost. They're very pointy on the ends. They can make you bleed for sure. So let's talk about roots a bit. So we have different types of roots. We have a tap root. What's a tap root?
A long straight root.
A long straight root, right? And it's a primary root is what we'll call it. And it's often found in dicots. All right. Anybody ever tried to pull a dandelion out of the ground or successfully pulled a dandelion out of the ground? That's exactly what you see, right? That long root. You don't see a fibrous root like that. You see a nice long root. It's a tap root. And if you don't get the whole root when you're popping out a dandelion, what happens? It comes back, and then your parents are like, why did you do that? Supposed to pull the whole root out. My grandfather used to walk around with a screwdriver and jab it down into the ground and loosen the ground and pop them out. Yeah, all the time. Screwdriver bent over trying to get them out of the ground. They make tools for twisting them out. Mm-hmm.
Did he ever eat them?
He did not, but who has eaten dandelion greens? I have. I've eaten dandelion greens. They're very bitter, but you can eat them. Yeah, do you like them? No, they're very bitter. Yeah, yeah. There used to be which show was it? I don't remember what show it was. It was Extreme Cheapskates. That used to be on, like, remember when the Discovery Channel used to have shows that you learned and then it just got weird channels like TLC and Discovery like went off the rails and just did weird stuff. But they had a show. Yeah, they had a show named Extreme Cheapskates, and there was a lady on the show who fed her family by foraging. And she's not like she lived in the woods. She lived in like a subdivision. And she would go to like the local park and pick all the dandelion greens and make a salad. And I'm like, well, that's not so bad. But then she would collect the roadkill. And I'm like, that's a bridge too far. I am not going to do that. She did all kinds of strange things. Made me wonder if how much of that was just made up because it was ridiculous.
One time, my friend's mom was driving and saw like a freshly killed deer.
Yeah.
And she called her son and was like, come pick up this deer so we can skin it and feed it to the dogs. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah, yeah. Like you probably don't want it if it's been hit by a car because it's probably got like blood all in the meat and stuff like that. And I'm not big on venison anyway, but good for the dogs for sure if it's like that. When I hit the turkey with my Mustang on the way back to college with my friend Whitney in the car and we murdered that turkey unintentionally and it was an explosion of feathers and we were both screaming in between crying and laughing like this weird emotion. And it was well, there were two of them. I've told some of you this story. There were two of them and they were walking, a little boy turkey and a girl turkey, and they were waddling towards the road the way a turkey would do. And we had 2 lanes. So I was like, well, I better give them some room. So I switched to the left lane just in case they came into the road. And then they ran. They ran in front of my car. And I hit the male. And you know, they have those little like rubbery heads. And his little head came up but right on my hood. And I was like, and there was this explosion of feathers and it went everywhere. And Whitney and I pulled off to the side of the road and got out, and like the pony and the crossbar on my Mustang were bent. I was real upset about that. But we wanted to pull the feathers out of the grill, but those quills, they look like bones, and we were like, oh, we were freaking out about it. And then this was in the middle of Dinwiddie County, Virginia, so it was some good old boys that were there, and he was driving by in his truck, and he looked at us and winked like we did a good job or something. But the turkey was on the double yellow line and the wind had caught its wings, so it was waving at us like that. So I was like, we better go back and make sure it's actually dead. And Whitney's like, what are you gonna do if it's not dead? I'm like, I don't think I have the heart to run over it again, but that's the correct thing to do. Like, you can't let it like suffer. It was very dead. And then when I got back to campus, I called my dad and I was like, I hit a turkey. And he's like, did you eat it? Did you take it home? I'm like, are you out of your mind? You see me bringing a turkey back to Hollins where some of these girls just had their debutante ball and like bring this turkey in. No, not happening. So anyway, so then we also have fibrous roots, which obviously is different from the taproot. So these are the ones that are like the little feathery branched out kind. When you draw roots, you probably draw roots that look like that or imagine them that look like that. Pine trees, like the kind that grow here, tend to have more of a taproot system and less of a spread. Like last week when we had the lady that talked about the redwoods, she talked about how their roots go out like 30 feet wide and they intertwine with other roots, and that's what keeps them up standing. The reason our pine trees will fall so often is because a lot of them have these kind of independent tap roots and they're not really caught, tangled into anything else. If the wind gets them good enough, they'll just come right down, right? So root structure and growth. We have root hairs, which are what? We just talked about them. Root hairs do what? What? Yeah, these are good at picking up water, right? And they're tiny projections from the epidermis. They increase the surface area for absorption of water. And then we have the cortex. And the cortex of a root is your layer of ground tissue within the root. And then you have an endodermis, and that is a layer of tissue that encloses the vascular tissue, so wraps around it. And then you have a root cap, and that's this deal right here at the end. And this protects the root as it forces its way through the soil. If you think about it, that plant is pushing that root through the soil, so there has to be something at the end that protects that from damage. So there is a little root cap there. And I think some of those slides have root caps that you can see too. So roots anchor plants in the ground or to their substrate. Like some plants are not really even in the ground, right? You've seen some grow out of rocks, or I've seen them grow in the middle of the highway. You ever seen that? Growing in the highway, it's like life will find a way, right? Or on the sides of buildings, on the tops of buildings, right? Yeah. We went into an old abbey in Scotland, and there were ferns just growing out of the walls. Like they just found a nice moist spot in the rock on the walls and just grew right into the stone. So they absorb water and dissolve nutrients from the soil. So if you're looking at your 2 root types here, your taproot is mainly found in dicots, and examples would be carrots, dandelions, and beets. Who likes beets? I love beets. It's just me and Isabella. We're the only ones that like beets. You like the pickled beets? I love the pickled beets. It's real good. If you take, I'm gonna tell you. You take like 1 little package of cream cheese and 1 little package of goat cheese, and you blend it up together. And then you take the little mini ones, like the little Auntie Nellie ones, they're a little tiny beets like this. And then you put it on a little skewer with a little ball of the cheese, and then trust me, and then the beet. It's so good. Anyway, so nobody likes beets except me and Isabella. Beets are delicious. They're very good for you, but they have a lot of sugar. And then your fibrous roots are mainly in your monocots, things like grasses. You ever pulled grass out of the ground and seen all the fibrous roots that come out of there, right? Lots of them. And this is like,
trees.
Depending on the tree, but most trees are dicots. So you usually see a taproot, but you can also see a spread out root system, but there typically is a main root in the center, right? And then a mature root has a large area of what tissue between its dermal and vascular tissues? There you go. Ground tissue, but yeah, ground tissue, but that was a good guess. So ground tissue, the root's surface area for absorption of water is increased by what? What were we saying does that? Those little root hairs. I was sorry, faster than you. Those little root hairs increase your surface area, right? It's like the folds in your brain increase your surface area of your brain, right? So these little root hairs increase the surface area for water and nutrient absorption. One function of what is storage of starch? Where do we store starch? What you got? Cortex is storage of starch. And why would we be storing starch? What is starch?
Energy for the foot.
Yeah, starch is a carbohydrate, right? So yeah, we're storing it. We're storing starch in there. Caitlin, you have this next one for me?
Yes.
There you go. Vascular tissue, vascular cylinder, sorry, is made up of xylem and phloem and is found at the center of the root. A root's apical meristem can be found just behind what? Just behind that root cap. So you have, oh, sorry, Jordan, I didn't see it. So you have that root cap that pushes through the soil, and just behind it is your apical meristem. And that's where all of your cell division takes place that allows that root to keep growing, right? Okay, so if you were to complete this illustration, it would look something like that. So I'll give you all a second to double check your notes and make sure you got that one. Oh, yeah. There, that better?
Yes.
Made it bigger. There you go. So here's your apical meristem. So this is where you got your mitosis going on. And then here's your root cap, which is basically like your hard hat for your roots, right? That helps it get through the soil or whatever it is it's pushing its way through. All right, and then, oop, that one already clicked, sorry. But two functions besides uptake of water and nutrients for roots would be to support a plant and anchor the plant in the ground and also to store food. What's the role of active transport in the uptake of water by plant roots? One seems pretty obvious. So energy from ATP is used to pump mineral ions. So it's a little less obvious than it seemed, right? Of dissolved nutrients from the soil into the plant. This increases the concentration of mineral ions in root cells. And as a result, water moves into the plant by osmosis. That's how it's working. Where in roots are active transport proteins located? Drew?
Plasma membrane.
There you go. They're located in the cell membranes or plasma membranes of root hairs and other cells in the root epidermis. What happens to water and dissolved minerals after they move across the epidermis of a root? So now they're in the root. Where do they go, Drew?
Through the cortex.
Yeah, so water and dissolved minerals move from the epidermis through the cortex into the vascular cylinder, and then they go wherever it is they need to go. Why is there a one-way passage of materials into the vascular cylinder of plant roots, Kenneth? Yeah, water and minerals cannot pass through the waxy Casparian strip once they pass through the epidermis. They're trapped in the vascular cylinder. So you don't want them to ooze out once they're in. It's like a one-way valve situation. How do water and nutrients cross the endodermis that surround the vascular cylinder? Jordan. There you go. Water and nutrients pass through cell membranes of the endodermis cells instead of flowing in between the cells. So the water is osmotic necessarily, but the nutrients can pass through the membranes. And remember, we talked about how some cell membranes have specific channels, and then so larger things can pass through. So that sort of stuff. It gets very, very in the weeds if you want to. You can get very detailed here. So what is root pressure, Eunice? Right, the force that causes water and dissolved nutrients to move out of the root's vascular cylinder and upward into the xylem of a stem. So there's pressure necessary in order to push it up because your xylem's taking things from roots to the shoots. There has to be some kind of pressure to get it up. It's not like there's a heart pumping it like in us. That's how we move our fluids around our body, right? So there's a pressure in the root that causes that. So people often give potted household plants more fertilizer than they need, and as a result, the plants begin to wilt and eventually die instead of getting larger and healthier. What could be the reason for that? Jordan?
Nutrients or poisons.
Can be,
Some fertilizers is acidic.
Some fertilizer is acidic. Kenneth?
Since they were given too much fertilizer, they closed their stomach, which
Okay. Anybody else have anything different? So roots are adapted for taking in water by osmosis, which is the movement of water toward an area with a higher solute concentration. If the concentration of solutes in the soil around the plant's roots gets too high, water begins to move in the opposite direction out of the roots and into the soil. So that was a very, very close answer. So yes, so you get too much solute, too many nutrients inside, the water has to balance. Remember osmosis? Remember we talked about how water has to balance on each side of the membrane, so it will move out and then your plant will wilt and die. So you absolutely can over fertilize the plant, which you don't want to do. So now we talk about stems. So we have different types of stems. We have two main types. We have monocot, which is vascular bundles that contain the xylem and phloem scattered randomly, like so. And then we have dicot, and these have vascular bundles organized in a ring-like pattern. Okay, has anybody ever done the celery trick where you stick a stalk of celery in colored water and watch it grow up and move up through the, yeah, and it causes the leaves to change color and it's quite pretty. You ever seen the daisies in the store that they do that too? They have like these rainbow daisies you can buy in the store, and they're like hot pink and blue and purple and unnatural colors because they've done the same thing. So in that case, think about what celery looks like sliced. Is it, and the leaves on celery, monocot or dicot? Dicot, yeah, because it's got veins in the leaves that don't run parallel, right? And then, so you can think of, I tell people to think of monocots like corn, right? You have corn, if you have a kernel of corn, you can't rub it between your fingers and split it into two, right? And leaves on corn, you've all seen corn stalks. They're nice long leaves with parallel veins that run through them. That's your monocot. Your dicot, if you think about, like, you probably have no idea what a kidney bean plant looks like, right? You've probably seen kidney beans, but maybe not a kidney bean plant. But can you take a kidney bean and take your fingers and separate it into two separate pieces? The bean itself, yeah. And you can do that with peas. You can do that with all the legumes, right? So you know those are dicots, right? And remember that your monocots have flower parts in what kind of multiples? Do you remember? Multiples of 3. And your dicots have petals in multiples of 4 or 5. Yep. So, and then the leaves, obviously, on your dicots are going to be the ones with the veins that go all different directions, and the leaves are spread out in different shapes and not nice long linear leaves. So whether you're looking at a flower, whether you're looking at a leaf, or whether you're looking at a seed, you should be able to tell monocot from dicot. And if you think about celery, you see, I mean, celery isn't round. It's got that kind of weird horseshoe shape, but you can see this in celery, right? When you cut a stalk of celery, you can see the vascular tissue in it, right? You can see the little holes. You ever notice that? Anybody ever seen that? Yes? Yeah.
I thought monocots and dicots were, monocots had one leaf when they came out, and dicots had two.
Yeah, one, so it's actually one seed leaf, which is the term used for that, like the halves of a bean. Those are seed leaves. So even though it's not really a leaf. So yeah, and yes, they can have one or two when they come up, but it's really the seed leaf that matters because that's the cotyledon. So like corn only has one seed leaf, like it's just one piece. You can't break it into two. Whereas like a navy bean or a pea, you can split into two. Those are seed leaves. It's kind of a misleading term because they don't look like leaves, right? So let's talk about stems and stem function. Stems have 3 important functions. What are they? Caitlin.
Produce leaves, branches, and flowers. Hold leaves up to the sun.
Yep.
And transport substances through the plant.
Perfect. And in the same order I had them. Yep. Produce leaves, branches, and flowers, hold leaves up to the sunlight, and transport substances between roots and leaves. Very good. Very, very good. And they will not just hold leaves up to the sun, but they will bend towards the sun. And next week, when we talk about all the different tropisms, like you've probably seen that, right? You've seen the plants that bend towards a window, and we'll talk about how they do that. It's very simple, but it's fascinating how they do that. But it's a very simple process. So stem structures. All right, so we have nodes on a stem. Here is an example of a node. And what is a node? How do we define a node? So a node is where leaves are attached. There it is. See the little leaves? They're attached. And then we have internodes. So what's an internode? That's going to, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, your space between your leaves right here. So node, internode is this space because there's a node here and a node here, and the space in between is an internode, right? And you'll notice that some plants, the leaves, like if your stem is here, the leaf will be like leaf, 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 and others it's like this, right? Some are parallel, some are staggered like that. And you can use that to help identify what kind of plant you're looking at too. That's one way that you can identify them. And then we have buds. What are buds? Here's a bud. What's a bud, Eunice?
Apical stems that use these.
Yes, contain undeveloped tissue. So yes, apical meristem or meristem tissue in general that can produce new stems and leaves. And then if we break stems down, you can see here are some cross sections of stem, what we call pith in the middle, right? And then you've got your xylem, phloem to the outside. Xylem's always closer to the middle. You can think of it almost like in animals, your arteries, which are, where your pumping is happening. It's going from your heart to the rest of your body, right? Those are typically closer to the center of your body, whereas your veins are more on the outside of your body because they don't have the same pressure in them. And it's the same thing with the plant. Like the plant, the vascular tissue under pressure is towards the middle. The tissue that doesn't have as much pressure is toward the outside. And obviously that's advantageous for us because if you cut a vein, it's going to bleed. But if you cut an artery, it's going to do what? Not squirt. Yeah, it's going to because it's under pressure. And every time your heart beats, it's going to go squirting out. Isn't that fun? So interestingly, plants and animals have evolved a very similar structure when it comes to how your vascular tissue is organized. It makes sense. So what are the three main functions of stems, Eunice?
They produce leaves, branches, and flowers that hold the leaves to the sun, and they transport substances.
Yes. What is an example of a stem that conducts photosynthesis and stores water? Anybody have that one? So this is, for example, a desert cactus stem conducts photosynthesis and stores water. Cacti tend to be covered in thorns or spines or spikes for what reason?
That comes from animals or people.
Yeah, because they're full of water, right? And a lot of them are edible. Anybody ever eaten cactus? Can be quite good. Yeah, can be quite yummy. Some of it's quite good. So what's a node again? Caitlin.
That attaches leaves to stem.
Right, it's where the leaves are attached to the stem. What kind of plant tissue does a bud contain, Jordan? Apical tissue, apical meristem. Yep. What does a vascular bundle contain? Colin. Yes, your bundle contains your xylem and your phloem. If you were to complete this cross-section diagram, it would look kind of like so. I'll make it a little bigger so y'all can see that. So your dicot stem is going to be nice and organized. Think of your stalk of celery. When you look inside, you see this, right? And everybody has seen celery leaves, right? Because most of you have probably done the thing where you stick it in colored water. So you've seen the leaves. So you know they don't have those parallel veins, which the monocots have. So that helps you remember. You chop a stalk of celery in half, you can actually see all these little bundles, right? Yeah. All right. Now, structure of monocot stems and dicot stems. How are they similar? Anybody got that one? Kenna. There you go. So they have vascular tissue, ground tissue, epidermal tissue, and their vascular tissues are in vascular bundles. But how are they different? Which is what we just said. Monocot's vascular bundles are scattered in the ground tissue, which is fairly uniform. And dicot's, the vascular bundles, are arranged in a ring near the epidermis. So if true, write true. If false, change the word. Plants grow in a way that is the same as the way animals grow. Kenna? False, she says. Yeah, it's a different form or whatever you could put in there, different way. The number of legs an animal will have is predetermined, but the number of branches a plant will have is not predetermined. True or false? Yeah, that's true. Remember when we talked about homeobox and Hox genes that have body plans for animals that help them determine what tissue is going to eventually differentiate from those particular areas? Yeah, plants are not structured that same way. So the primary growth of stems is the result of elongation of cells produced in the ground tissue. No, in your apical meristem. You have to have that apical meristem because remember, that's where your mitosis occurs, right? The increasing thickness of stems and roots and dicots and gymnosperms is called new growth. Kenna? False. What's it called? Secondary growth. Secondary growth is common in monocots. Yeah. Rare, sorry. It's rare in monocots, sorry. Dicots can grow to great heights because the increase in width supports the weight. What do we think about that? True, she says.
False.
False, he says. If it's false, what's the other answer? It's true. So, vascular cambium forms between the xylem and the phloem of vascular bundles. Between, is that the correct word? Yes. In conifers and dicots, secondary growth takes place in stems and roots called the vascular cambium and cork cambium. Stems and roots. Meristems. The inner layers of a stem are produced by cork cambium. Outer covering. Stems become thicker because the cambium produces new layers of vascular tissue each year. It's true. All right. So, anybody ever seen a photo of a cork tree? So it's, yeah, have you seen it? You seen how they harvest the corks from it? They just pop it off because that particular part, it's almost like the bark, it's towards the outer covering of the tree, is very, very thick. It's very thick. Thick enough that you can make a wine cork out of it. They don't come in sideways. Most of the time they just go straight in. It's like taking a core sample and they just pull it out. It's pretty wild. Sometimes they go in sideways, but it can be very, very thick on those plants. It's pretty wild. So complete the diagram of secondary growth by identifying the structures involved and where they appear and label primary xylem and phloem and secondary xylem and phloem and wood and bark. So something like this should be what you've got: year 1, year 2, and year 3. All right. What happened? Oh my. Hold on. Where were we? I lost it. I lost it. I lost it. Where's my little pie wedges pieces? Oh goodness. Roots. We did roots. We just did that. Ah, here we are. All right. So most of what we call wood is made up of layers of what kind of xylem? Secondary xylem. Very good. The dark wood that no longer conducts water is called what? Ken again. Heartwood. Yep. The wood that is active in fluid transport is called, Drew? Sapwood. And the lighter wood in tree rings contains what kind of cells within thin cell walls compared with thin cell walls compared to cells with the darker wood. So that's larger cells is what they're looking for there, with thin cell walls compared with the cells in the darker wood. Alternating layers of light wood and dark wood are used to estimate a tree's age. Yeah, you've all seen that, right? So this, like, pine trees in particular, they have towards the center, it's the sapwood that people are using. I think it's the sapwood that people are using. Some people call it fat lighter. You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. But that's like, it's great to burn. It burns well. So people will seek that out in particular. Anybody ever done that? There are other names for it too. Fat lighter, heard it called other stuff too. But anyway, it's the part of the wood that burns nice and hot for you. So if you were to complete this illustration showing the formation of wood and bark and use the terms wood, bark, cork cambium, vascular cambium, phloem, heartwood, and sapwood, it would look something like so.
No one got close to that.
Bet you no one got close to that. Did anybody get close to this? I bet you did. I bet some of you, yeah, I bet some of you did.
You know, I don't draw the bar.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
Oh,
This label. Yep. All right, so girdling is a term that refers to removing the bark of a tree in a complete ring around the trunk or branch. Predict the effect that it has on the tree. What do you think?
All the vascular tissue is gone.
Okay. Anybody else have anything different? What you got?
It's not protected from birds, insects, and other animals.
Birds, insects, and other things? Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it'll eventually cause parts of the tree above the injury to die. And it happens because the phloem vessels that conduct products of photosynthesis to other parts of the tree, including the roots, will be cut and no fluids will be able to flow. In addition, the cork cambium will be gone and the damaged area, in the damaged area and unavailable to replace the bark that keeps the tree from losing water from the sapwood just under the bark. So, actually, it's the heartwood that's the fat lighter, I think. My brain. So I have a tree out there. I have an outdoor chandelier. It's not up at the moment, but it's battery operated candles. I love it. And it hangs from one of my trees if I'm having an outdoor party. But it's on, I use a tree branch like a pulley. So I lower it down and put the little electric candles in it and pull it back up. But I have it on a tie down on the back of a tree. So in order to get that tie down firmly in the tree and have it grow into the tree, I had to take a section of bark and remove it. And then I had to they make this paint. And have you ever seen the black paint that you can put on injured parts of trees? So it seals the plant. So I painted all the little black paint around it, which basically seals it. So although it's lost the xylem in that area, or the phloem, sorry, in that area, it's protected from the bugs and things like that won't get in. You can also use that stuff, say you lob off a branch that is in your view, like we have some out there where we've cut the branches so we can see the river better. Okay, when you do that, it's going to start sprouting little leaves and little twigs out sooner or later because it's trying to photosynthesize, right? But you can take that same paint, slap it on where you've cut it off, and it will stop growing because it seals that edge. So if you've ever used that stuff, it works real well. Like we have some, I think the previous owners had crepe myrtles right in front of the house. I don't know why, but we have some volunteers that keep popping up out of the ground. And we finally gotten to the point where it's like we kept cutting them off, but the little stem part keeps getting wider and it keeps sprouting little shoots. So we finally just cut them off and painted them because we don't want them there. Please stop growing here. So let's talk about leaves now. So we have leaf structures. So the blade is what? How would you describe the blade or define it? Kind of? Yeah, it's the big flat part. This part right here. Kind of what you think of when you think of a leaf, right? It's the blade. And you should know what the petiole is because we did a lab where we measured them.
In stuff.
Yeah, it's this little stem-like thing that attaches the leaf to the stem of the plant. So it's the little stalk that attaches right here. It's called the node, remember? Right where it attaches. And then we have veins. And how would you describe those, Barrett?
Like the interconnecting system in between parts of the leaf.
Yeah. They contain xylem and phloem actually in the leaf even, right? And you can see them visibly on the leaf usually. And so here is a good diagram of a stoma, like we investigated in lab. So you can see how these are the guard cells, right, around it. And there's the stoma, in fact, is the hole. And here again, this is the same image we had before where you can see the cuticle. You can see these guys, palisade cells. And then you have some spongy area. So within your leaf structure, you have the palisade mesophyll. And what's that? What happens there? Yeah.
The cells are closely packed and they absorb light.
Yeah, tightly packed cells. These absorb light. Lots of chloroplasts in there. Nice big vacuoles like this that keep them nice and plump and full of water. And then you have a spongy mesophyll, and that's this part down here. And how would we describe that? Caitlin?
This layer.
Yeah.
Air spaces between.
Air spaces. Yeah, much less tightly packed than the palisade, which is nicely packed. And then you have your stomata, which we talked about before, and those are your little pore-like openings. They take in CO2, release O2, right? Right. And then guard cells, we talked about these. These are around each stoma, and these open and close, allow the stomata to open and close, right? So leaf function, photosynthesis, it takes place where? In the what part of the plant? In the chloroplast, yeah, but in the mesophyll cells of the leaf, right? Right in that top part, in those palisade cells, the palisade mesophyll. And then what's transpiration again? Who remembers that? Barrett? No? Yes? No? You're thinking about it?
Transpiration. Is it the movement of water throughout the leaf?
Not water. Good guess. Isabella?
Water from the leaf to the outside.
Yeah, there you go. Water
Yeah.
from the leaf to the outside. So water, yes, but not within. Did you say you said within the leaf, didn't you?
Yeah, I meant the plant, like water moving throughout.
Yeah, yeah. It's more the water moving in and into and out of the plant instead of within the plant. So translocation is your water and nutrients moving within the plant. Transpiration is your loss of water from the plant through its leaves. And it helps to pull water up from the roots. If you didn't have water leaving the plant through the leaves, then you'd have nothing but pressure at the bottom, right? Because remember, there's pressure in the root that's pushing the water up the xylem. So you have to have it go somewhere. So it goes out into the atmosphere around the plant.
To pack the dirt around, like when you plant something,
It's more to kind of keep it stable.
not to like add pressure to the roots.
No, they'll get their own pressure. As long as there's fluid to pull in, they'll get their own pressure. And gas exchange, you have carbon dioxide is taken in, and what is released? Eunice?
O2.
Yeah, oxygen. Oxygen is released, right? Very good. All right, the structure of a leaf is optimized for the purposes of absorbing what and carrying out what, Barrett?
Absorbing sunlight and CO2 and producing ox.
Carrying out.
Oh, photosynthesis.
Yeah, you got it. All right. And the what of nearly all leaves is covered by a waxy what kind of?
Blading.
Yeah, your epidermis or your blade, yeah, is covered by your waxy cuticle. Very good. Vascular tissues of leaves are connected directly to the vascular tissues of what? Where do they connect? To the stems. Yeah, to the stems. The area between leaf veins is filled with a specialized ground tissue. And what do we call that? That's your mesophyll. Remember, you had palisade and then spongy sections of that mesophyll. A layer of mesophyll cells that absorb light that enters the leaf is going to be your palisade mesophyll. Small openings in the epidermis are your stomata. The thin, flattened part of a leaf is the blade. The bundle of xylem and phloem tissues in a leaf is your leaf vein. A stalk that attaches a leaf to a stem is your petiole, right? And a loose tissue with many air spaces between it, that's your spongy mesophyll. Okay, so your mesophyll is your ground tissue in a leaf, and it's divided into spongy and palisade. Palisade's at the top, tightly packed. That's where your photosynthesis takes place. Why can't stomata be kept open all the time? Jordan?
He needs to release and absorb, yeah.
Right. So water loss also would be so great that few plants would be able to take in enough water to survive. So if it was constantly just oozing water out of the stomata, you wouldn't, the plant would just dry out. It has to be monitored and carefully metered, right? So guard cells are forced into a curved shape when water pressure does what? Okay, yes. So when your water pressure increases, your little guard cells go from this to this. Okay, we were just saying that you have to let water out of the stomata in order for your xylem to keep flowing upward, right? So when you have enough water in your plant or you start to get too much, your little guard cells go whoop and your stomata opens up, and now you've got water that can go out into the atmosphere. If you don't have enough pressure because you don't have enough water in your xylem, they're going to go whoop, and now they can't let any water out into the atmosphere. The thick inner walls of the guard cell pull away from one another, opening, obviously, your stoma, and water is lost by transpiration. Guard cells straighten out when the water pressure is what? What did I say?
decrease.
Yeah, when the water pressure decreases. When your water pressure is low, they're going to close up. Inner walls of guard cells pull together, closing, obviously, our stoma. Okay, so when you're reading this next week's lesson about all the tropisms, I want you to keep in mind that water pressure within the cells can cause them to change shape, right? Keep that in mind when you're thinking about how plants move towards the sun, how vines wind around a tree. A lot of that has to do with where your water pressure is located within a stem and how those cells will either grow in size or shrink. So say I have, let's just pretend I have 2 layers of cells. This may remind some of you who were here for physical science, I want you to think back to the thermostat example where we talked about the bimetallic strip. Who remembers that? Do you remember the bimetallic strip? How did that work?
One side would shrink under heat and the other side grew, I think.
Very close. One side would expand faster than the other, right? So if you have 2 metals and they're together like this and it starts to get hot, let's say this side is a metal that expands faster. As it expands, it causes the other side to bend, right? And that little coil would turn around and that's how it would hit a switch and make a thermostat work. All right, so if you have a plant and it needs to go to the sunlight, what do you think is going to happen? The sun's over there. What's going to happen to the cells on this side?
You're pushing towards the sun.
How?
The water pressure is gonna increase, like, because like the sun's gonna produce heat and the water's gonna expand.
Yeah, it's going to allow for this kind of action. These are going to elongate and you're going to get this going on. So if you've ever seen plants that lean towards the light, vines that wrap around, it's that simple mechanism, that the same mechanism they're using to do this in a lot of ways, not always, but most of the time, same mechanism. But there's different triggers within the plant that tell it to do that.
How do sunflowers look? Do they look the exact same way?
Mm-hmm. Pretty wild, right? Seeing sunflowers, they follow the sun during the day, right? They don't have eyes. They don't know where the sun is, right? It's pretty cool. All right, so which is likely to happen if a plant if it starts losing more water than it can take in? What's going to happen?
It's gonna die.
It's going to die. It's going to wilt and die, right? It's going to wilt and die. Which is a plant that has narrow leaves with a waxy epidermis? What do you think?
So I have a question. Are
Yeah.
these questions in like lines or anything?
Yeah,
They are?
it should be. Oh, maybe did this page get missed? This page might have gotten missed. Okay, so this one didn't get copied. All right, so which plant has a narrow leaves with a waxy epidermis? What do you think? Looking at it. What do you think? Yeah, in this case, it's a spruce, but yep, very good. Pitcher plants' leaves are adapted for what? You ever seen a pitcher plant? So pitcher plant is one of those ones that it has a long kind of stem that comes down. You ever seen them?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can see.
They catch and digest insects. It's like a cup, right? And
I think
I think it's not a flower, so it probably is a leaf, that part. Yeah. Never really think about that.
And just the pit.
Yeah, and a lot of them have those little hairs and they all point one direction, make it harder for it to get in, and then little bugs just slip in and they just digest them in the little cup. But I think it is technically, I've never thought about that, Isabella, but I think it is technically a leaf, even though it's a different color than the rest of the leaves, because it's not, to my knowledge, a reproductive structure, but that's a good one. Yeah, it's a leaf, specialized leaf. Yeah, that makes sense. A rock plant adapts to hot, dry conditions by having very few what? What do you suppose? Hot and dry. What would it have few of? What do you think? Few leaves? Anybody else think anything different? Stems? Roots? So it has very few leaves. Very good. You ever seen those little rock plants? They call them air plants sometimes. You just, missed them. The inside of the glass or plastic walls of a greenhouse full of plants is very wet on a cool day. Where's the water come from?
It's
It's the same question you had before.
Oh, it's Transpiration.
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, inside surfaces of a greenhouse are wet because water vapor from air condensing on the cooling glass or plastic, and the vapor comes from transpiration. So it's just like you breathing on your window and making fog. Plants are doing the same thing. So let's talk about water transport in plants. We got three forces transporting water in plants. So we have transpiration, which we talked about. It's leaving. So it's almost like if you suck through a straw, right? You're making the liquid leave the glass. It's going through the straw and into your mouth. The same thing's happening here. You've got water leaving the leaves. So it's a technical term for the evaporation of water from plants, and that's going to cause some part of almost like a vacuum situation, right? A negative pressure. You can think of it like that. As water evaporates through the stomata in the leaves or any part of the plant, it creates a negative pressure, also called tension or suction in the leaves and tissues of the xylem. A negative pressure. Did you ever think about that? A negative, it's the same way your diaphragm works. When you breathe, your diaphragm drops, it creates a negative pressure and fills your lungs with air. That's what's happening. And this is happening within the plants. It's got a negative pressure because you've got water leaving the vascular system through the leaves. Negative pressure exerts a pulling force on the water in the plant xylem and draws the water upward, just like water upward when you suck on a straw. So then another one would be cohesion. Who remembers cohesion from physical science or even chemistry? We talked about it. Do you remember?
The force of attraction.
Yeah, and what causes one water molecule to be attracted to another water molecule?
The ion.
Not ions. Think about it. Drew?
The hydrogen bond?
Hydrogen bonds. Yes, hydrogen bonds pull water molecules together, right? They will form, they like to stick to each other. It's cohesion, right? So when water molecules stick to one another through cohesion, they fill the column of xylem and act like a huge single molecule of water or a huge single chunk of water, like water in a straw. And then we have this last one, which is capillary action. And it's the movement of a liquid across a surface of a solid caused by adhesion between the two. So it's cohesion if it's two water molecules. It's adhesion if it's a water molecule and something else. Think about adhesive. Who's ever gone to the doctor and had your finger pricked and they take a tiny glass tube and they touch it and your blood goes whoop right up the tube? Seen it? You've seen it? That's capillary action. It also happens if you take the tip of a paper towel and touch it to a water droplet, all of it goes into the paper towel. It's adhesion between the water molecules in your blood, and the surface of whatever it's touching. It works very well in small tubes, which is why they use that little tube. What are they testing when they do that generally?
What sugar?
Blood iron.
Sometimes sugar, but usually iron. So what they're doing is they take that little prick, and they take that little tube and they attach it there, and then they usually take that tube and there's like a little pad of, it's almost like a clay, like a putty, and they stick it in that, and that blocks the end of it, and then they put it in a centrifuge and they spin the little tube and it separates the parts of your blood. So you get plasma, some white blood cells, and then you get your red blood cells, and they can tell if you have enough red blood cells going on. That helps them know whether you have your hemoglobin count, what your hemoglobin count is, which is how well your body's transporting oxygen, right? If you don't have enough, then you've got a problem.
James had to get that once on his birthday.
Oh, that's fun. Happy
Um,
birthday.
And he was like 9 and he kicked the nurse that was doing it.
I had a grand plan when I was about 4. I didn't go to the doctor very often when I was little because I wasn't sick a whole ton, but I did go for my annual appointment, and I knew that in the lab in my doctor's office was a purple tiled building, very 1980s. And in the lab where they would take you, they had that chair, you know, the chair? You've seen the chairs, right? You sit in, they have the little arm where they, all that kind of business. But I knew that the lady she would sit on a stool and she would roll over to me, and my mother would be holding me and they would prick my finger. And I hated that. So I devised this entire plan for days. Like I fantasized it and I was like, I've got it. This is what's going to happen. When she rolls up to me, I'll just haul back with my legs and I'll just kick her stool and then she'll go across the room. But I lacked a dismount. Like what happens after that? I didn't think that far. I just was going to get her away from me. And I was probably 4. I still remember attempting this. It did not go in my favor. They had my mom do that one where your mom locks you in by putting her leg over your legs. And I screamed bloody murder and they still stabbed my finger. But I tried to kick her. I think I may have hit her knees or something. It didn't go very well, but yeah, I was mean like
He
that.
was successful, and then our mom made him apologize.
Ah, there you go. Yeah. There's still a family story about my sister-in-law having to get a shot at the Navy base, at the Navy clinic, and there were 5 corpsmen that had to hold her down, and even though she was little, she threw a fit. Yeah. So, yeah, when you place a tube in water, water automatically moves up the sides of the tube because of adhesion, even before you apply any sucking force. This is also why if you could stand on the deck and you could put a glass of water at the bottom and get like a boba tea straw, and it's going to be a lot harder to suck that water up the straw than if you got a very, very thin straw. You could actually suck through the very, very thin straw. Partly adhesion and partly because you're moving less volume against all that air pressure that's in there too. So the narrower the tube, the higher the water climbs on its own. In plants, adhesion forces water up adhesion forces water up the columns of the cells in the xylem through fine tubes in a cell wall. I know, like I've shown in, I think mostly physical science, but we watched the Mr. Wizard videos, who's like the coolest human. He was my childhood hero, Mr. Wizard. But he did that with the straw. He put a kid on like the 8th floor of a building or something and had him suck grape juice through a straw, and it was pretty impressive. Like, he's like, what do you want, the big straw, the small straw? And the kid was like, well, the big straw, that should be easier. And no, the small straw was easier. But it was fun. Mr. Wizard's awesome, man. Transport in plants, nutrient transport. So changes in nutrient concentration drive the movement of fluid through the phloem tissue in directions that meet the nutritional needs of the plant. So this is all about homeostasis and balance, right? If you've got more of something or less of something, it wants to balance. That's the entire mechanism for all this stuff, even the osmotic parts, right? So the leading explanation of phloem transport is known as pressure flow hypothesis, and it's shown in this figure. So you've got water and it goes up this way with pressure in the xylem, and then it can move to the phloem and it kind of flows down and takes the sugar with it, and then it hops back over and then it goes back up and you get this cycle. This is the idea. The membranes of sieve tube cells, that's these guys right over here, right, can use active transport to move sugars from their cytoplasm into the sieve tube itself. So stuff moves in and out. Water then flows by osmosis, creating pressure in the tube at the source of the sugars. If another region of the plant has a need for sugars, they are actively pumped out of the tube into the surrounding tissue. Water then leaves the tube via osmosis, reducing the pressure. The result of the pressure flow system is the flow of nutrient-rich fluid from the sources of sugars, source cells, to the place where sugars are used or stored. Where do plants store a lot of their sugar? A lot of it goes to the roots, and yeah, and then obviously fruits have sugars and things like that. But for storage, it's a lot of carbohydrates go to roots. Think about your tubers like potatoes, right? There's a lot of energy in a potato, right? A lot of carbohydrate in a potato. The pressure flow system gives plants flexibility in responding to changing seasons. During the growing season, sugars from the leaves are directed into ripening fruits or into roots for storage. As the growing season ends, the plant drops its fruits and stores nutrients in the roots. So there they are, storing in the roots. As spring approaches, phloem cells in the roots pump sugars back into the phloem sap, and the pressure flow system raises the sugars into stems and leaves to support rapid growth. So the visual analogy of climbing circus clowns, God, why they have to give us clowns, that makes it possible for falling clowns to pull others up the ladder, yeah? Yeah, so the rope that ties the clowns to each other transfers the force of gravity, pulling on falling clowns back through the chain to the ones still climbing. Who has a clown issue? Anybody here have clown issues? Yeah. Some people are freaking terrified of clowns. I actually was a clown for many years. That was my high school job. I did birthday parties and stuff. I can make like 200 animal balloons. Like I was in demand, man. I was popular. It was fun. But there were people, you'd walk in a room, people go, nope. And walk right out. Like, I'm not, nope. Yeah. And that was when the new it wasn't a thing, but the old it was, right? How are water molecules similar to the clowns? I hate this entire metaphor. For an analogy, the force between water molecules is keeping them together and transferring the pull of transpiration back through the rising column of water. Let's leave the clowns behind now. Complete the table about the types of attraction between molecules, cohesion.
Attraction of same, and then adhesion and attraction of different.
Yes, exactly. Cohesion is same types of molecules being attracted to one another. In our example here in plants, it's hydrogen bonds that attract one water molecule to another water molecule. And then adhesion would be unlike molecules. So water and whatever the surface is that it's against. All right, so correct the word. Or add the correct word, sorry. Water cohesion is especially strong because water molecules tend to form what, Kenna? There you go. We've been saying there. There it is. Hydrogen bonds with each other. The tendency of water to rise in a thin tube is called capillary action. Very good. Hello. There you go. The height to which water can rise in a tube is determined by its what? Yes, Sander. Diameter. So remember we talked about the big straw versus the little straw. The smaller the diameter, the more that capillary action is going to be effective. The larger, nah, because you've got all the adhesion on just on the outside of the column of water and not very much in the middle. And it can't pull it all up. But if you have adhesion in a smaller tube, it'll go straight up. All right, so what in xylem can form many hollow connected tubes through which water moves? That's going to be your vessel elements. And the pull of transpiration extends from the leaves to the ferret. Roots. According to the pressure flow hypothesis, why must sieve tube elements in phloem be living cells? Does anybody have this one? This is because sugars are moved across cell membranes in phloem tissue by active transport. This process requires ATP, which is made, which is made by cells during cellular respiration. Only living cells can conduct cellular respiration. Where sugar concentration is high, what is the source of water taken by phloem? The water drawn in by osmosis in areas of high sugar concentration comes from the xylem tissue. How does the structure of vascular bundles in stems and roots and in the veins of leaves make the process of pressure flow possible? It's the vascular bundles and veins in leaves that contain both xylem and phloem. The two are close together, which means water can move from the xylem to the phloem without having to pass through many cells. All right, so you're about to see an old friend here. Especially you chem students will recognize our old friend. Who's our favorite chemistry video guy? Well, not Five Guys. Who's our favorite? What's his name? Professor Dave. Do we love Professor Dave or do we love Professor Dave? Professor Dave's amazing.
As we learned in our study of human anatomy and physiology, life begins with cells, which can then organize into tissues, which can then assemble into organs and organ systems. And this organizational hierarchy applies to plants just as it does to humans. In plants, especially vascular plants, there are two organ systems. Those are the root system and the shoot system. The root system includes all of the parts of a plant that grow below the ground. These include roots, tubers, and rhizomes. The roots are branching structures that extend into spaces in the soil and absorb water and mineral nutrients, delivering them to the rest of the plant. Some plant roots also include pockets for bacteria or fungal colonies to live in. The fungi living in these pockets are called mycorrhizae, and they form symbiotic relationships with plants, providing mineral nutrients to the plant in exchange for sugars from photosynthesis. Legume plants, like beans and peas, form similar relationships with bacteria living in nodules on their roots. These bacteria specifically help legumes collect nitrogen, which is often a scarce resource in the soil, and its scarcity can limit plant growth. Many plants also use their roots as a place to store starches, a convenient form of long-term energy storage made of complex polysaccharides, which we learned about in the biochemistry series. However, other plants, like potatoes, store their starch in underground organs called tubers. Starch storage in tubers is important for plants that grow year after year, called perennials, because the energy in the starch allows the plant to grow before its leaves and photosynthetic abilities are functional at the beginning of the growing season. This explains why, if you've ever left a potato on your counter for too long, it will actually start growing buds and shoots of its own. The last part of the root organ system in plants is the rhizome. Just like tubers, not all plants have rhizomes, but the ones that do have an advantage because rhizomes can do multiple beneficial things for a plant. A rhizome is basically a secondary plant stem that grows out horizontally under the ground. This provides stability to the plant, especially if the rhizome also grows small supplemental roots. Rhizomes can also grow new plant shoots up out of the soil, so a rhizome can allow a plant to create clones of itself and grow over a much wider area, potentially outcompeting other plants trying to grow in the same space. This strategy is called clonal reproduction and is common in certain types of plants like grasses. So that covers the root system, which is the underground portion of a plant. The other portion is the above ground organ system, or the shoot system. The shoot system includes the vegetative or structural parts of the plant, and also the reproductive parts of the plant. The vegetative parts of a plant include organs like the stem and leaves. The stem provides central structure for a plant, holds all of the other above ground organs, and serves as a connection between the root and shoot systems, allowing nutrients to flow up and down through its xylem and phloem tissues.
To your little seed.
The stem may also divide into several smaller stems
Cotyledons.
in bigger, more complex plants like trees. The leaves attach to the stem or branches via small stems called petioles. Leaves do the main work of providing nutrients to the plant through the process of photosynthesis, which we covered in detail in the biochemistry series. Water, gases, and nutrients are moved around the leaves through their veins, which are very tiny tubes of xylem and phloem tissue. Leaves can be wide or thin, long or short, round or oblong, thick or thin. The shape and other physical qualities of leaves are distinct to each type of plant and can provide certain benefits. For instance, the fat, wax-covered leaves on succulent plants like cacti allow the plants to store extra water in the arid environments where they grow. The broad leaves of plants in the rainforest allow them to capture as much light as possible in an ecosystem where there's a lot of competition for sunlight. In general, leaves can be either simple leaves with one undivided blade or compound leaves, where the blade consists of multiple leaflets, which are sometimes even further subdivided. The other part of a plant's shoot system is its reproductive organs. These organs are often all contained within a structure we know of as a flower, although we will discuss some kinds of plants that do not have flowers. At the base of a flower, there are modified leaves called sepals that protect a flower until it is done developing, at which point it is ready to open. The petals of a flower are also modified leaves. They're often bright and colorful to get the attention of pollinating animals, and may even have ultraviolet patterns on them to guide insects like bees. Flowers on wind-pollinated plants are usually less showy and smaller than flowers pollinated by animals. As we said, a flower contains a plant's reproductive organs. Most plants are hermaphroditic, meaning they contain both male and female reproductive organs. The male reproductive organs, called the stamens, include the anthers, where pollen is stored, which is like the sperm of a plant, as well as thin filaments that connect the anthers to the flower. While there are often multiple stamens in a flower, there is usually only one pistil, which is the female reproductive organ. The top of the pistil is called the stigma, and this sticky platform is where pollen attaches at the beginning of plant reproduction. The style is the long channel that connects the stigma to the rest of the pistil, and pollen tubes grow through the style. The bottom of the pistil is the ovary, and this is where the ovules, or eggs, of a plant are. We'll get into the specifics of plant reproduction later in the series, so for now we can just note that once pollinated, the ovary of a flower and the fertilized ovules will become the fruit and seeds, ready to create a whole new generation of plants. So that covers the organs and organ systems of plants, which are organized within the underground root system and the above ground shoot system. Next, let's talk about how plants are able to grow and develop all of these organs. Thanks for watching.
It's Short Hair
For
Dave.
more tutorials. Support me on Patreon so I can keep making content. And as always,
Most of us prefer long hair Dave, don't we?
What happened to Professor Dave?
He cut his hair, man. He usually got the shoulder length hair, but he always has the shirt unbuttoned and a very hairy chest. That's his thing. Like, oh, always. We do a lot of Professor Dave in chemistry. Okay, so why did that just disappear on me? All right. Yes, Professor Dave explains. All right, so, couple things. I'll put it in the weekly email, but remember that our open enrollment begins when for this class? March 1st. So we're still in priority enrollment. That means if you intend to come back next year, get enrolled, right? You've got your parents all got an email, right? That has that information. I can't guarantee your seat otherwise. Around the first week of February, I'm going to start advertising for our next dance. Our next dance is Saturday, April 25th. It will be my last dance. I'm not doing any more because it's weird to keep doing them when you don't have a homeschooler and he's graduating in May. And that would be really weird for me to keep hosting dances for people. That's weird. Happy to do it while I have a homeschooler, not going to have one anymore. Aside from y'all, but y'all not really mine. I mean, you're mine, but you're not mine. So, you know what I mean? It would just be weird. It would be weird. People would be like, why are you doing this? So we're not going to do it anymore. So if you want to come, that's the last one, right? So that information will be out sometime the first week of February. So watch for that. Anybody have any questions? Are we good to go? All right. Be careful in case there's any ice left anywhere. I'm gonna put these, can you take these over to the counter for me where people can grab? Thank you. Don't steal it.
Mine's mom looks like he might have grown up to be like, you know, like how most like games